Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Yashodanandana Vrajajanaranjana Yashodanandana Vrajajanaranjana Yamunatira Vanachari Yamunatira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Yashodanandana Vrajajanaranjana Yashodanandana Vrajajanaranjana Yamunatira Vanachari Yamunatira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Yashodanandana Vrajajanaranjana Yashodanandana Vrajajanaranjana Yamunatira Vanachari Yamunatira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Prabhupada, Jaya Jaya Prabhupada. Nitai Gaura Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Nitai Gaura Hari Bol. Jai Om Vishupad Brahmahamsa Parivrajacharya Stuttarashata Shishimadi Divine Grace Laisi Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to Sri Guru and Gauranga, all glories to Srila Prabhupada. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 Narayanam Namaskritya Narang Cheva Narottamang Deving Saraswating Vyasam Tato Jayamaviraye Nashtaprayeshu Bhadreshu Nityang Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttamashloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtviki. So Krishna Prema Prabhu is leaving, or he maybe already left, so I'm jumping in. That was a misunderstanding. I thought he will be here. We are reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 4, Chapter 26, Text 12. Atmanang arhayang chakre. Atmanam arhayang chakre. Dhupalipasrag adibihi. Dhupalipasrag adibihi. Sadalankrita sarvango. Sadalankrita sarvango. Mahishyam adhadhe manaha. Mahishyam adhadhe manaha. Atmanam arhayang chakre. Dupale pasragadibihi. Sadalankrita sarvango. Mahishyam adhadhe manaha. Please chant.
Atmanam arhayam chakre. Atmanam arhayam chakre. Rupale pasragadibi. Rupale pasragadibi. Sadvalankrita sarvango. Sadvalankrita sarvango. Mahishyam adhadhe manaha. Mahishyam adhadhe manaha. Atmanam arhayam chakre. Rupale pasragadibi. Sadvalankrita sarvango. Mahishyam adhadhe manaha. Atmanam arhayam chakre. Atmanam arhayam chakre. Rupale pasragadibi. Rupale pasragadibi. Sadvalankrita sarvango. Sadvalankrita sarvango. Mahishyam adhadhe manaha. Mahishyam adhadhe manaha.
Mataji's.
Atmanam Mahayam Chakre Dupale Pasragadivi Sadvalam Krita Sarvango Matishyamādade Manaha
Atmanam Arhayam Chakre
Atmanam Arhayam Chakre
Dupale Pasragadivi
Dupale Pasragadivi
Sadvalam Krita Sarvango
Sadvalam Krita Sarvango
Mahishyam Adate Manaham
Mahishyamādade Manaha.
Word for word translation. Atmanam,
Atmanam,
himself.
himself.
Arhayam,
Arhayam,
as it is ought to be done.
as it is ought to be done.
Chakre,
Chakre,
did.
did.
Dhupa,
Dupa,
incense. Alepa,
Alepa,
smearing the body with sandalwood pulp.
smearing the body with sandalwood.
Srak,
Srak,
garlands. Adibihi,
Adibi,
beginning with.
beginning with.
Sadhu,
Sadhu,
saintly,
saintly,
beautifully. Alankrita,
Alankrita,
being decorated.
being decorated.
Sarvangaha,
Sarvangaha,
all over the body.
all over the body.
Mahishyam,
Mahishyam,
unto the queen.
on the queen.
Adadhe,
Hadade,
he gave.
he gave.
Manaha,
Manaha,
mind.
mind.
Translation by Srila Prabhupada. After this, King Puranjana decorated his body with suitable ornaments. He also smeared sandalwood pulp over his body and put on flower garlands. In this way he became completely refreshed. After this he began to search out his queen. Purport. When a man comes into good consciousness and accepts a saintly person as a spiritual master, he hears many Vedic instructions in the form of philosophy, stories, narrations about great devotees, and transactions between God and his devotees. In this way, a man becomes refreshed in mind, exactly like a person who smears scented sandalwood pulp all over his body and decorates himself with ornaments. These decorations may be compared to knowledge of religion and the self. Through such knowledge, one becomes detached from a materialistic way of life and engages himself in always hearing Srimad Bhagavatam, Bhagavad Gita, and other Vedic literatures. The word sad alankrita used in this verse indicates that one must be absorbed in knowledge gathered from the instructions of saintly persons. Just as King Puranjana began to search out his better half, the queen, one who is decorated with knowledge and instructions from saintly persons, should try to search out his original consciousness, Krishna consciousness. One cannot return to Krishna consciousness unless he is favored by the instructions of a saintly person. Therefore, Srila Narottam Das Thakur sings, Sadhu Shastra Guru Vakya Chitete Koriya Aika. If we want to become saintly persons, or if we want to return to our original Krishna consciousness, we must associate with Sadhu, a saintly person, Shastra, authoritative Vedic literature, and Guru, a bona fide spiritual master. This is the process. Om Jnana Timirandhasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Uta Padakamalam Shri Guru Vaishnavangscha Sri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatham Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitangscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Panchakalpa Tarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shiva Sadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. This analogy is so interesting, and my personal realization is if we go into a meditation about what is actually being said, with this analogy we can derive so much realization about our own Krishna consciousness. And here in this verse, now it is described how after King Puranjana, he returns from the forest because he was doing some sinful activities in the forest. Now he returns home, and in the previous verse yesterday from Madhusudan we heard how he took bath and then he had a dinner and he took rest. And after he took dinner, he took rest, he decorated his body. That's what we hear today. And how did he do that? He smeared sandalwood pulp over his body and put on flower garlands. Like Srila Prabhupada has a flower garland today, by the mercy of the devotees. You? Nice, thank you. And like Krishna Prabhu is wearing sandalwood pulp. So that's a very sacred way of decorating the body. And Prabhupada, especially by reading Prabhupada's purport, we can understand much better this analogy. Without his purport, of course, it will not be possible. And does anyone remember what was the meaning of cleaning the body, taking a bath, and then taking dinner and taking rest? What Prabhupada describes, what it actually means? Mm-hmm. Prabhupada mentions one specific thing. He's accepting a spiritual master. I just read again. King Puranjana's coming home, taking bath, and having an appropriate dinner indicate that a materialistic person must retire from sinful activities and become purified by accepting a spiritual master and hearing from him about the values of life. So that's the first step, that somebody who is acting on the material plane, acting for sense gratification, comes to realize I have to stop and I have to turn to a person who can give me real knowledge, who can guide me how to become happy. And most of us, we have done this. We have accepted a spiritual master. At least if we didn't take the formal initiation, we have accepted Srila Prabhupada as our Shiksha Guru, and we are hearing from him. So that's the first step, that one stops the nonsense and then accepts the spiritual master. And if we look at this analogy of how somebody cleanses the body and then takes dinner, it's not enough, really. It might be enough, but if you have a goal, now here in this allegory, it is clear that he wants to, after engage together with Puranjani, he wants to attract her, and so he has to decorate himself. So it's not enough to just clean oneself, but one also has to do a positive activity. Put a garland, put some sandalwood. I think for maybe this is more Matajis can understand this more, because usually Matajis they have a tendency to decorate. You know, they have nice saris, or sometimes they put some makeup. Why? Because it's not enough to just clean yourself. You also need to do something in order to then attract. And so in this way, in our process of Krishna consciousness, Prabhupada ends the purport by saying that this is the process. And when I read that, I was remembering one Prabhupada memory I was just hearing a few days ago of Naranarayan. Do you know Naranarayan? The Prabhupada disciple? You've seen the memories. He's one of the first, and his memories are one of my favorites. And he tells there that one time, he was one of the earliest disciples of Srila Prabhupada. I think he joined in 1967 in San Francisco. And so he was with Prabhupada in the beginning years, and he was with Prabhupada, and Prabhupada was in his room, and he was chanting outside, and he's saying that all of a sudden I became so overwhelmed by this anxiety and this doubt that will I actually make progress in spiritual life? He was explaining, you know, I see I'm chanting, I'm doing all these things, but will I actually make progress in spiritual life? So he had this question, this very sincere question, and he just decided, let me ask Srila Prabhupada, and he knocked on the door. And he said he immediately regretted that he knocked on the door, because he became afraid that, oh, what will happen, you know, I will see Prabhupada. And then, so Prabhupada called him, he said, yes, please come. And so he went inside, and Prabhupada was chanting japa, walking back and forth. And so he came in, paid his obeisances, and Prabhupada looked at him, what do you want? And so he asked Prabhupada, Prabhupada, you know, I'm practicing, I'm doing all these things, but is it actually possible for me to become a pure devotee? And Prabhupada continued walking. Naranarayan describes, he just continued walking. So he became nervous, no. He just continued walking, chanting. And then after some time, Prabhupada turned to him and said, why not? You're following the process. And Naranarayan says he felt so relieved that Prabhupada gave him the assurance that yes, you can become. And he said, because you're following the process. This reminds me of another pastime he describes, where Prabhupada was with Allen Ginsberg. Allen Ginsberg was this hippie guru who was helping Prabhupada a lot, and they used to be, Allen Ginsberg used to visit Prabhupada, and they would converse in a room. And usually the devotees would be outside, but because they were so eager to hear every word of Prabhupada, they realized that in a door next to Prabhupada's room, in a room next to Prabhupada's room, there was a wardrobe or a closet, and that actually it was quite thin wall there, and so you could hear Prabhupada. So they would drill a hole through the wall so that they could, and then the devotees would gather and observe and listen. Who saw Narayana's memories? Who heard them? Yeah, really recommend. And then he describes that one time Allen Ginsberg asked Srila Prabhupada, what was he asking? They were speaking about Kali Yuga, and Prabhupada was explaining about Kali Yuga. I just have to remember to tell you properly. And so, yeah, Prabhupada was describing the symptoms of Kali Yuga to Allen Ginsberg. And, you know, all these horrible symptoms of Kali Yuga, how it will manifest more and more. And then Allen Ginsberg asked Prabhupada, what will happen to your disciples? Will they also be affected by Kali Yuga, and will they also be degraded in that way? And Prabhupada he describes it so nicely, Prabhupada was very surprised. He said, my disciples? No, my disciples, they will be gone back home, back to Godhead. They are very advanced. They are chanting, they are reading, they are taking part in this movement, they are taking part in this process. They will be gone back home, back to Godhead. And then Allen Ginsberg asked, and then what will happen in the end of Kali Yuga? And Narayana, he tells it so funny. He said, and then Prabhupada leaned over to Allen, and Allen leaned over to Prabhupada, and Prabhupada said, Allen, in the end, I will eat you, and you will eat me. As the final symptom of Kali Yuga. So, but we can understand that Prabhupada, he has given a process, and he knows that the process is bona fide, and whoever takes part in it will actually benefit. So now the question is, how much do we actually take part in this movement? How much do we actually accept the process? And I thought, since most of us, we live in the temple, at least at the moment, we can try to remember how Prabhupada, he gave us a process to follow in the temple. And how we can understand there's different steps here. As we said, most of us, we have accepted a spiritual master, at least we have accepted Prabhupada. But that's not the end of the story. It's not the end of the story. To clean oneself, then one should decorate. And Prabhupada explains in the purport that when one accepts a spiritual master, then he hears many Vedic instructions in the form of philosophy, stories, narrations about great devotees, and transactions between God and his devotees. So that's an important point, that it's not a fashion to accept the Guru. Now I also have a spiritual name, and my Guru is such and such, and he has so many disciples, and I'm also one of his disciples. And in this way, we are satisfied on the platform of false ego. No, that's when everything starts. Then, when we take initiation, when we accept the spiritual master, then we have to hear from him. And one can even be very close to the spiritual master physically, but if one doesn't hear properly, then the result of taking initiation and accepting the spiritual master will not be proper. And it's very interesting, if we read Chaitanya Charitamrita, we can understand that it's not enough to be close to a saintly person or even God himself. In Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's Leela, two instances come to my mind. One time when he was in South India, he had with him Krishnadas, was his name. So some servant they sent with Mahaprabhu. And he was all the time with Mahaprabhu very close. But what happened? When they were traveling, they came to some village of gypsies. Gypsies, no?
Yes, gypsies.
Gypsies are like...
Yes, yes. Cigano.
Tzigana, yeah. How you?
The gypsies are originally from India.
Oh, yeah. I heard that once, yeah.
They're still there. They're still gypsies.
In India.
Even in India, they have gypsies, and they call them for some special occasion. They're gypsies. They're gypsies. You understand?
Meaning the
different and separate culture and.
Yeah. But you mentioned this word Tsigan?
Tsigan.
Because we also call them Tsigüno.
Yeah, it's a dirty word. In Croatian is Tsigani.
It's a?
Tsigani in Croatian. It's a dirty word.
It's a dirty word.
Romi is the way they would like to be called.
Yes, yeah.
In Ireland is knackers.
This also is not.
Yeah, it's very impolite if you call somebody Tsigüno.
Yes. It's very like.
So they came to such a place where the gypsies were staying, and Krishnadas, even though being so close to Mahaprabhu, he fell in love with a gypsy woman. And Mahaprabhu actually mercifully rescued him. Because then what happened, they somehow got into a whole conflict, and I think they wanted to kill him, no? Yeah?
Kidnapped, I think. I remember that he was kidnapped by them, but he didn't put much resistance, something like that.
Okay.
Uh-huh.
They wanted to kill him. Wow. Hare Krishna. And then another instance, which is less dramatic, but one Brahmana who traveled with Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to Vrindavan, Balabhadra Bhattacharya, they were all the way, through the Charikant forest. He was the one who was cooking for Mahaprabhu. And in Vrindavan, we spoke about this. I told you, I was just reading that how Mahaprabhu was staying at Akrura Ghat. He had his base there, and from there he would visit the places. And many people would come and see him because, Mahaprabhu, they could understand that he's not an ordinary person. And then at some point, the people who came to visit him, they started to tell to Mahaprabhu that we saw Krishna at Kaliya Ghat at night. We actually saw Krishna. And Mahaprabhu didn't say anything, and this was continuing. Every day they would come, we again saw him, and then Balabhadra Bhattacharya, who was with Mahaprabhu, and Mahaprabhu was saying, what kind of nonsense they are talking. I've seen Krishna. It's Kali Yuga. How is it possible that Krishna is appearing? And Balabhadra Bhattacharya, he told Mahaprabhu, I want to go and also see Krishna. So he was with Mahaprabhu, but somehow or other he fell into that trap. He believed. So from this we can understand it's not enough to take initiation, it's not enough to be even close to a saintly person, but one has to properly associate. And we know there is a clear distinction between Vapu's Sangha and Vani Sangha. Prabhupada spoke about it in today's quote, saying that it doesn't matter that he will now disappear, because we have his books and we can associate with him. So that's a fact. Prabhupada is in his books. And then Prabhupada says, if somebody associates with a saintly person and hears properly, what will happen? He becomes refreshed in mind. Mahaprabhu, he gave the Shikshastra Kacheto Darpanam Arjanam Bhavamaha Davagni Nirvapanam, that by hearing you actually cleanse the mind, you refresh the mind. So remove all the nonsense, all the dirt. And then Prabhupada explains, when one hears spiritual knowledge, the mind becomes refreshed, and then this knowledge is in the mind, and through such knowledge one becomes detached from a materialistic way of life and engages himself in always hearing Srimad Bhagavatam, Bhagavad Gita and other Vedic literatures. So what happens then is you naturally will feel aversion to sense gratification, all kinds of materialistic tendencies. And I would like to ask you, since you're practicing, do you have that experience that, things which you probably were attracted to before, that somehow or other by the mercy of following the process, you actually have a realization that you feel detached or you feel disgusted? Yes. You can give an example?
Элементарный пример – это то, что необходимо в материальной жизни. Это дом, машина, семья, акцент мой был на этих предметах, на этих материальных вещах.
I was concentrated on these material things, financial house, car, family.
And now he's not feeling that.
Сейчас такого привязанности нет.
With a big smile. Yes. Yeah, I think we all, that's of course that's the best if you really detach yourself from these basic things. Shri Jagannath Baladev Subhadra Shri Gaurnitai Ki Jai. These are the basic things: house, wife, family and car. So if we feel that we are not really attracted anymore, it's a good sign. Yesterday I went somewhere in the evening and I walked by the Bellevue, the opera house, and there is a circus, how you say that? Circus, you say? Going on, it's a big tent. And I remember when I was a child, our parents used to take us to that. No, it would be like once a year you go, and it was fun, especially for children. And so I walked by, and of course I didn't go inside. But the mind sometimes actually goes in that direction. Oh, it would be nice. What's actually happening inside? But then there was a food stall, a truck, and usually I could immediately smell what they were selling, hot dogs. And I immediately realized, these old samskaras, how, because unfortunately growing up not in a devotee family, we used to eat all that stuff. And yeah, I felt so disgusted, that how it's such a disgusting lifestyle. And it's nice when we see that in our life. So that's one thing, but then the other thing, and I would like to see how much this has developed in all of you. Then one engages himself always in hearing Srimad Bhagavatam, Bhagavad Gita and other Vedic literatures. I think that's the more tricky one. You know, that we feel a strong eagerness to hear, to read, to go to classes, to listen lectures and all that. But that's where it should lead to. That one actually naturally wants to hear, to understand more. And Prabhupada said one must be absorbed in knowledge gathered from the instructions of saintly persons. So one must constantly be in touch with, and Prabhupada quotes Sadhu, Shastra, Guru, with one of the three. We must associate with saintly persons, Shastra and Guru. This is the process. And Prabhupada, actually when I said before that these analogies can help us to understand it much better, it's actually Prabhupada's purports which help us to understand it much better. You know, the very detailed process, how it should work. So Prabhupada gives one more point. He says, no, for now he said you should accept the spiritual master, you should hear from him, and then your mind should become purified, and then you're detached from material life, and then you always want to hear. But then there is one more important point, and this is probably quite a subtle one. Decorated with knowledge and instructions from saintly persons should try to search out his original consciousness, Krishna consciousness. And why is this point so important? Because we can accept the spiritual master, we can listen from him, we can even have a great eagerness to read and hear. But what can happen? No, we can. What could be a pitfall? Yes.
Then we don't get attracted to Krishna, and then we lose the center or in practicing all these things, lose the goal.
Yeah, lose the goal. That's what I thought of. That we even have a taste for reading and the scriptures, but the Mayavadis also have some taste to read. But what will they do? They will give huge lectures and they will present the knowledge they have. And it's a natural tendency that if we receive knowledge, we can also become proud and we can misuse that knowledge to, we present the knowledge in a way that it will serve our own purpose to gain some admiration and some, to be distinguished, like, oh, they see me as a very knowledgeable person. And yesterday I had a phone call with one god brother, and somehow we came to this topic. Somehow or other we started to speak about this, that in ISKCON there is a great tendency that for competition, in different levels, one has to become the better puchari than the other one has to be a better kirtaniya than the other one, or one has to give more mind-blowing lectures than the other one has to cook a better feast than the other one. So it's natural, and Prabhupada encouraged that. But as we know also from history, it can lead one astray. And this devotee, while we were discussing, and he's also in the movement longer, and he knows the problematic. He was at one point speaking about how he sees, and he was actually making the point that there is a lot of competition in ISKCON. And then he was making a very bold statement that actually if you come to ISKCON and you try to establish your own glories and all that, this is offensive to Prabhupada. And we should rectify that. So we should follow the process and not lose the goal out of sight. The goal is Krishna consciousness, or as the analogy shows, the goal is to decorate oneself, to clean oneself, to decorate, and then Puranjana, he wants to meet Puranjani and attract her. In a similar way, we do all of this to attract Krishna. And it's a subtle thing if we actually do all of this really to please Krishna, to get his attention, or if we do it for some other purpose. And at the same time, we shouldn't put too much pressure on ourselves, because it's natural that there is some other motives, and we will get purified by following the process. But we have to follow the process, and maybe that's a good time also to speak about, and I'm preaching to myself here. Prabhupada gave us a process, especially when we live in the temple, and that process is quite simple, but it is also difficult at the same time. And what is the process? The process, as it is described here, it means to hear from the saintly persons, from the scriptures, from the Guru. And how did Prabhupada establish this? By establishing the morning program. Mangalarati, Japa, and Guru Puja, Kirtan, and then class. And we should have faith that simply by following that process, we will actually attain Krishna. We don't need anything more. Sometimes, this tendency creeps in that, I have to do this, I have to do that, and also that is good. We have a certain inspiration in spiritual life, and we should follow that and integrate in our spiritual life. But we should not give up the basic instructions of our spiritual master, because in the instruction of the spiritual master there is a lot of Shakti. There lies the mercy to attain Krishna. And it is really, if you study Prabhupada's instructions, that he will not give a millimeter compromise to the morning program. You never find him compromising that, except when you're sick. That's an exception. But otherwise, he's not giving he's not compromising. And from this we can understand that's the most important thing for us to do. And we know that when we took initiation, there was one thing Srila Prabhupada or his representative told us to chant 16 rounds. And we have to constantly remind ourselves about this and become faithful and follow the process properly. And in this way we will be able to get purified and attain Krishna. So I would like to end here. All glories to Srila Prabhupada, all glories to Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam. We have 4 minutes if you have any comment or question. Ma Krishnam Prabhu, Yamuna Keli Mataji, Guru Nishta Prabhu, if you would like to say something, or other devotees also.
When I commented that this question, the faith and process, and the process is enough to go to Vaikuntha, get the perfection, is based in the Padishram Sayat, it's Sayadana. And Sharanagati also come up with this point, faith and process, that will transport us to the perfection.
Good, yeah, there's this verse also reminds me. I was remembering the one, in the faith in Guru and that everything will be revealed. But this is a little bit different.
The one who has implicit faith in Guru and
all the conclusions
are revealed.
It's a very famous Sanskrit verse, but it doesn't come to me.
This verse is very important because it's a phrase.
yeah.
But
Wait, I can look it up.
I remember once somebody asked Prabhupada what is the excuse to not come for Mangal Arati. Prabhupada said something in the sense that only if you die. It's a Prabhupada statement.
Hare Krishna. Yasya deve para bhaktir yatta deve tata guru taseta katita yarta prakashante mahatmanaha. Good. Thank you for your attention. Yeah, you wanted to...
I want to comment something when you said this hot dogs.
Yeah.
But it's one thing that I find difficult, maybe you can give some solace. Sometimes it's like it's heavy to realize that some of our tendencies will have to carry to the rest of our lives, and they will be here in the background. I feel at least like that sometimes, and the hot dog is like one example, because I made a sausage one time in my life. I was helping somebody making a sausage.
Okay.
So a sausage, I don't know if you know.
I'm making it actually,
yes,
before it goes on.
Yes, to make it. So maybe you don't know what a sausage is made of. So I will tell you. Now, in the Vaishnava culture, we say suchi and muchi. So so many things are muchi. But the sausage, of course, meat is inside. But what is holding the meat together? They take an animal's intestine, they wash it, and inside of it they make sausage. And even if knowing that, still I remember that the taste was good. That's the...
But that's, the spices and all, no?
Yeah, of course. It's not the taste of meat or so, it's the taste of spices. But just by knowing that it will hurt you, it's like not rubbish, it's beyond, it's uber rubbish. But still the mind has the memory that the taste was good. That's why it's sometimes, and other things are there. I'm just saying that it's not such an easy task, we will just get by, we will just detach.
It's interesting you bring it up. I just maybe yesterday or the day before I was thinking about this, because there is some skaras which are, also troubling me, and I'm thinking, I don't know if in this lifetime I will be able to transcend. But somehow I had this overwhelming thought that maybe, I won't be able to completely forget, but I'm sure if I stick to the process faithfully, at the time of death, it can be removed by Prabhupada's mercy. And I also felt at this point, this is like a test also, that I'm not depending on my own strength, but I'm depending on the strength of the process of the Guru, and even though it seems impossible. And but we know the verse, if you have a higher taste, you can give up the lower taste. So now we can take prasadam and cultivate the higher taste. Yeah. Sure.
I want also add something about purport. This process which was mentioned by Prabhupada, that we should accept Guru, and by hearing we will attain knowledge, and then but through this knowledge we will achieve eagerness to hear, and then we will have this also this desire to find our real consciousness. And I think that it is expressing some kind of mood, yes? I mean, that we know this lila with Jagai Madai, where when they was freed, do you remember what they do after? Yeah? So they serving in the ghat, yes, and many people came and kicked them, and they want to punish them, but they always tried to follow, to do service, because they had this mood that we are sinful people, and we have to go through this. Yes, we deserve this, all this. So this is a special mood that we do many bad things in this world, and we have to somehow rather to get all reactions for this. And I mean, not really to suffer, like, but if we have some problems that I mean that we, for example, we somebody chastised us, or guru said some gives us some instructions, and our ego can say that should I follow it or not? But this mood is a proper way to accept this process. That's what I want to add.
Can I quote the verse which you remind me of? Last time Sachinand Maharaj was here, he was speaking about that verse. It's in Srimad Bhagavatam 10:14-8. I will only read the translation. My dear Lord, one who earnestly waits for you to bestow your causeless mercy upon him, all the while patiently suffering the reactions of his past misdeeds, and offering you respectful obeisances with the heart, words and body, is surely eligible for liberation, for it has been